Thank you for joining us for this webinar on how to run Rescale in interactive mode with end-to-end desktops. We'll get started a few minutes after the half hour. All right, let's get started. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Rescale webinar series. In these webinars, we cover a variety of topics to help our users get more out of the Rescale platform and to introduce new features. If you're new to the series, welcome. You'll find you'll learn how to use the Rescale platform much faster, as we will cover some useful tips and frequently asked questions. If you're a Rescale Pro already, you'll be glad you joined this webinar, as we are covering an exciting new Rescale feature. Today's topic is how to run Rescale in interactive mode with end-to-end desktops. First, let's have some introductions. My name is JJ Jones, and I'm on the partnerships team at Rescale. Running our demonstration today is Phan, a member of our prized Rescale engineering team. Just a few administrative items before we get started. First off, we are recording this session, and it will be made available via the Rescale resources page at resources.rescale.com. Secondly, if you have any questions during the webinar, please make sure you type them into the questions section in the GoToWebinar panel, and we'll address these at the end of the webinar. Okay, let's dive right in. Brian, interactive mode with end-to-end desktops. Help me out, high level, what is this and how does it benefit me?
That's an excellent question, JJ. So what end-to-end desktops is and what running in interactive mode means is basically you're running with your engineering application's UI, and at the same time, when you're running this application, you're taking advantage of the compute power of an HPC cluster. So you're basically getting the best of both worlds. You're getting the user experience from the GUI and the compute power of an HPC cluster. Okay. And basically what I'm going to be showing you today is how to actually launch one of these end-to-end desktops, and basically how to run in interactive mode on the Rescale platform. So if you're new to the Rescale platform, once you log in, you'll see this view here. We call this the jobs list view. And basically and as you can see, I have a few desktops already launched. So what I'm going to show you now is how to launch one of these desktops. So the first step that we're going to do is go to New Job up in the top left here. So once you click this, you're going to be presented with basically the job setup page. And here you can specify your input files. You can give your job a name, and you can select your software and hardware. And I'll be walking you through each one of these steps. So for this demo, I'm going to be running ANSYS Workbench, an ANSYS Workbench project. We're going to have a tapered beam, and we're going to be varying the forces on this beam. And basically, because we're varying these forces, we're going to have a bunch of design points. And basically, what I want to demonstrate to you is how we're going to be able to run these design points in parallel, taking full advantage of this high-performance computing cluster. Cool. So let me start off by choosing my input file. So what I'm going to be using here is a ANSYS Workbench archive. And next, I'm going to be selecting my software. So I'm going to click on the software button here, and I'm going to click this checkbox here that will allow me to launch an end-to-end desktop, or basically in interactive mode. So once I check that, you'll see that the software, your software is filtered out, and you can select ANSYS interactive workflow. And basically what this is an ANSYS analysis which sets up a ANSYS environment for you. So you'll have access to Workbench, electronics, and for the ANSYS power users out there, you'll have access to the standalone Fluent application and also the standalone CFX application. So once I've selected the software, you can select your version. So for today's demo, I'm going to be using version 19.2. And so next I will choose my licensing option. And for this demo, I'm going to be using some on-demand licensing. And then finally, I'm going to choose my hardware. So for this demo, I'm just going to choose our nickel core type, and I will be running, let's say, 16 cores. And last but not least, let's give our job a name: webinar and end-to-end desktop. Cool. So once you have all these settings configured, you can review your whole job setup. So here I'm running here I see my input file. I'm going to be running ANSYS, and here are my hardware settings. Finally, once you are ready to launch this hardware, you can click the submit button, and we will begin provisioning your hardware and getting your desktop all set up. And basically, once everything is provisioned, you can click on this connect to interactive session, and this will give you a desktop session on that cluster. So I actually have a few desktops actually launched, and we can jump right into that. Cool.
So Brian, a quick question. I noticed you're running ANSYS Workbench. I know Workbench has a feature called Remote Solve Manager, or RSM, that users can use to distribute their solves for local on-premise clusters. How does this feature relate to ANSYS RSM?
So with this feature, we are actually using ANSYS RSM. For everyone in the webinar here, I'm not sure if you've ever tried to configure RSM on your own, but it is a pretty involved process. You do have to have some IT knowledge and just knowledge about the cluster to get the integration right. But as an engineer, I don't really want to focus on my infrastructure. I want to focus on designing my product. And basically, we take care here at Rescale with this feature, we take care of this for you. So you don't have to worry about any of the infrastructure. You can pick your hardware configuration, launch, and you can get right into running your simulation. Cool. So as you guys can see here, I have a end-to-end desktop currently launched. You can see that we took some time to validate the input, which took about a minute, and then our cluster took about 5 minutes to launch. And yeah, now our cluster is running, and I have my input files here. And let's jump right into the end-to-end desktop. And basically to do that, I'm just gonna click connect. And I'm presented with a Linux desktop session. Yeah, cool.
So Brian, this is a Linux desktop. I noticed that when you fired it up. Is this only available in Linux?
At the moment, yes. This is currently only available on Linux. So it's actually cheaper to run on Linux, just because you don't have to pay the I guess Windows licensing fees. So this is definitely a cheaper option. Although for the users who aren't really familiar with Linux, it's not that big of a problem because once you launch Workbench or ANSYS Electronics, the UI will be the exact same as if you were running on Windows. Cool. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to open ANSYS Workbench and get started with running the simulation. Okay. Okay, and we have ANSYS Workbench launching, and we should be good to go in a moment. All right, so as you can see, I've just launched ANSYS Workbench, and you might notice that we do have some more modules than you're used to seeing. This is because, so here on the Rescale platform with ANSYS, we've done most of the available integrations with the ANSYS products. So for example, we've installed some extra modules for like encode. We've also integrated Workbench with ANSYS Electronics. So if you do want to run ANSYS Electronics from within Workbench, you do have that option. And last but not least, we have also integrated with the optimization framework called Optislang. So if you are running a Optislang workflow, you will be able to take advantage of this feature and basically distribute this optimization to get your results faster. All right. So let's go ahead and open my project. So on the end-to-end desktops feature, your input files are placed in your home directory under the work and shared folder. So as you can see, here is the archive that I've attached, and I'm basically just going to open this, and let's save the project in this folder. Okay, cool. And as you can see, this is my tapered beam analysis, like I mentioned before. And what I'm going to do now is configure this. And let's take one step back. As you can see, I have 8 design points here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to distribute these 8 design points to run on this cluster. And to do that, what I'm going to do is go to the solve properties, and I'm going to modify my update option. So let's submit to remote solve manager, and we will be submitting to the local queue. The local queue is configured with all the resources of the cluster that you provision. So whether it's a single node or 100 nodes, you will have access to all the resources through this queue. Next, I will modify my job submission. I want to take advantage of this cluster, so I'm going to run 1 job for each design point. And finally, I am going to modify my execution mode, which will be parallel, and I would like to run on 4 cores per design point. So I'm going to save these settings into the project. And last but not least, I will be updating this. And we can open up the job monitor here.
So Brian, as you're doing this, you create a cluster kind of on demand. And like you said, it could be 1 node, it could be 100 nodes. When you're doing that, the RSM is automatically configured each time you launch the interactive desktop?
Yes, that is correct. So we basically take care of all of the infrastructure provisioning in the background. So once this desktop is launched, you can jump right into your simulation on single core, or it could be 100 nodes. Cool.
So right now you're doing your solve and the job is running. But what happens if I lose my internet connection or if I accidentally close my browser?
That is completely fine. So your infrastructure is in the cloud, and it will be, so this cluster will be running until you tell it to stop. So you can tell it to stop by going onto the platform on the job status page and clicking the stop button. And if you don't do it, it will remain running. If you're scared that your job will run for too long, there is the option in the hardware settings to set a wall time, and you can set a wall time, and once that time is hit, your cluster will automatically deprovision.
Okay.
Cool. Okay. And as you can see, I have, because this is a 16-core cluster, I'm running 4 cores per run. I have 4 design points running in parallel, and I have 4 points that are currently queued. Okay. All right. So, so as you can see, I have a few design points that are completed. And basically, the results are being read back into the Workbench project. And once I'm actually done with this project, all you really need to do is save the project, go back to the job status page, and click the stop button. So when you click stop, it'll ask you, are you sure? And you can click OK. And basically, we will begin saving your data and deprovisioning the cluster.
So Brian, where is my data? Where's my data when you have it in that interactive desktop? And then once I shut it down, where's my data?
Okay, so let's start off with where is my data on this interactive desktop. So if we jump into a terminal session, let's do this. So your data is currently in your home directory. And inside the home directory, there is a work and shared folder. So if I jump into this directory, I can see that all my input files are here. Basically, what this shared folder is a NFS exported directory that is mounted on all of the nodes on your cluster. So if you are running a MPI job, for example, all of the nodes should be able to access the files within this folder. So, all right, and moving on to where is my data once my job is done. So once I click stop, your data is actually moved from this folder back into cloud storage. So you will be able to access it there. So basically, because your data is in the cloud, you can either post-process your results in the cloud, or you also have the option of pulling your results back to your local workstation and post-processing there.
So Brian, if I have a large interactive desktop that I'm running, saying I'm doing a large CFD job, and I've distributed it over 500 cores, some odd. For post-processing, if I wanted to do it in the cloud, would I have to continue paying for those 512 cores in the cloud on that interactive desktop to post-process the data?
No, you definitely don't need to keep that large of a cluster up, especially if you don't need that type of compute power. So one alternative is you can launch a smaller end-to-end desktop session and maybe post-process there. Alternatively, we also have a desktop feature on Rescale as well. So if I click over to the desktops tab, basically we have a bunch of pre-configured ANSYS desktops that you can launch here. This configuration runs on our 4-core Onyx configuration, and for some post-processing workflows, this is enough compute power to post-process those results. And also, if you want to do visualization on your results, we also offer GPU desktops as well, where you can post-process there as well.
Okay, great.
Cool. All right.
So is there anything else that you have in the demonstration that you want to show?
I believe that is it. Let's jump real quick right into our Workbench project. As you can see, everything is, I see check marks across the board, which is good. And if we jump over to the parameter set, I have the equivalent stress on all of the forces applied to my tapered beam. So finally, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to save this project, close this out, jump over back to my jobs page, and I am going to stop this cluster. All right. Cool.
Excellent. Okay, so that wraps up the demonstration portion of our webinar. What we'll do now is move on to the Q&A section. So if you haven't already done so, now's the time to type your questions into the question section on the GoToWebinar panel. While people are typing in their questions, just want to remind everybody that they can rewatch this webinar at any time by going to the Rescale resources page. If anyone doesn't have a Rescale account yet, it's free to register, and you'll get $10 in hardware credit just for signing up. You can do so at rescale.com/signup. Okay, so we'll jump into the Q&A section. So First question comes from Riza. And the question is, when we talk about interactive, does it mean that we can see the case as it's running? I see that you are opening a new session.
Yeah, you can see your case running. For example, if you're running a workflow that's using the CFX standalone application, what you can do is you can actually see visually, basically, you can look at your residuals as your simulation runs. And the advantage you get with running interactively is you're able to checkpoint interactively and also stop your simulation whenever you want.
Gotcha. And we have a follow-up from Riza, and yep, that addressed her question. Perfect. Okay, next question comes from Melissa. Melissa wants to know, how does this work with other software applications like Star CCM Plus or LS Dyno?
Distributing your simulation is it's very dependent on the application. So for example, I'll go into Star CCM. So Star CCM, the way to distribute it is you pass it a machine file. On the end-to-end desktop session, you do have access to various types of machine files to distribute your application. And these files can be found in the home directory. So if I do an ls here, you can see I have various hosts and machine files. You just pass Star CCM one of these in the UI. And once you start it up, it should distribute all the processes across the cluster.
Excellent. Excellent. Okay, next question we have, Rahul wants to know, next, this is a good one. He has a Rescale account, but he does not see the option in his user interface. Does something need to be done in order to enable this feature?
Yes, something does need to be done for you to see this feature. So at the moment, this end-to-end desktop feature is currently in beta. So if you would like to test it out, please shoot us an email and we can get you set up, get this feature enabled for you, and you should be good to go to run your simulations.
And how do they contact Rescale?
They can email us at info@rescale.com, and we should be in touch with you shortly after.
Okay, great. Okay, now what if, another question coming in, what if I need to ensure my data remains in a regional boundary? This person works with ITAR controlled data at times.
I see. So here at Rescale, we have multiple platforms in multiple regions. If you're running with ITAR data, you can use our ITAR platform. This can be accessed at itar.rescale.com.
And then what other regional platforms do you have for export control?
For export control, we also have a European platform, a Korean platform, and also a Japanese platform as well.
Excellent. All right, give a few seconds for any other final questions to come in. We're in our final minute here. Okay, so we will, for everybody that registered, we will be reaching out with a link to this webinar whenever it is released on our resources page. We will also, you'll see an email when this feature goes from beta to live. So look for it in our newsletter. But as we said, if you want to access this feature in beta form, then please let us know. We'd be happy to to turn it on. I want to thank everybody for attending. If you have any questions, please reach out to us at info@rescale.com. That's all for this episode. Bye, and thank you for attending.